Everybody today. I hope everybody's having a great day today. My name is Teresa. I am the owner and artisan over at NTS Design Co. And this is my new spot on YouTube. So I am a content creator for Dixie Belle Paint Company. And so this is my new hangout spot for a little while. So I hope you guys are enjoying your day and I hope you are ready to have some fun with me. So this beautiful buffet, as you can see, let me back up and move you guys down some so you can see her. She's absolutely gorgeous. She's gigantic, right? So she is painted and fluff. So I did a base coat in fluff, and then we are going to be doing some blending today. So I'm going to be blending Sandbar, which is a beautiful neutral. I want to make sure that I keep this piece nice and clean and crisp, but I want to soften some of that white. Fluff is a beautiful white. It's more of a gray white. It's not like a bright, bright. Cotton is Dixie Belle's brightest white. So fluff is kind of like my go-to because it's a good mix between a bright white and something that's just a little bit softer. And so we're just going to soften these edges some and kind of make it not look so crisp and brand new. And then we're going to add some details and some shading in these little detail areas and pieces like that. So what I'll be using today is my Bestane brush, and I'll be using some Dixie Belle minis. And then I brought some other little brushes and like some artisan brushes that Dixie Belle has too, just to get into these little nooks and crannies to make things just a little bit easier. So supplies you'll need: paint, brushes, water, and then a rag to offload on. So let's get started, guys. You ready? So first of all, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put a very thin coat of the fluff paint back on here. And what that's going to do is it's going to give my sandbar something to blend into, because you can't blend dry paint. It's a little hard. So we're just going to go ahead and do that for starters. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to open my fluff. I already stirred it before I went live. I try to stir my paint more than shake it because then it gets all on my lid. And I'm not saying I do it every time, but I do try to make sure that I keep my lids pretty clean because they can get kind of gross. So we're just going to go ahead. I'm going to start with my Dixie Belle Mini. And before I ever paint anything, I always give my brush a good mist. And then I'm going to work that water into my brush. And what that does is it allows my brush to be damp. And if there's any like chunks of paint or dust or anything that was in my workshop, it makes it easier for it to be able to, if I can find it, it'll come out. So now I'm just going to dip very lightly and very, very lightly. There's barely any paint on there. And we're going to work in this area and then we're going to work down and over. So we're going to work in small sections for blending. If you're new to blending, it is great to use colors that are like each other because they blend into each other easily. The colors that I am using today, Sandbar and Fluff, are pretty similar. So they will blend into each other seamlessly. It won't be such a harsh blend and you won't see some of those hard lines. And I'll also be using this, which is my favorite, the Bestane brush, and it does those nice swirly motions as well too. So we're just going to kind of have some fun today and play around. We'll see where it goes. All right, so let's go ahead and we're just going to, and you can mist your piece too. That helps get your paint to move. Again, very little paint. I'm not looking for coverage. I just want to have a place for my paint to blend into. And I am going in very lightly. You can always add more paint. Adding is easier than taking away. So I'm just going to get my edges and we're going to come right on in here. We're going to work in this small section first. All right, now that I've got that on there, I'm going to give it a good mist. And then I'm going to switch my paints. So let me put that brush down. I'm going to go ahead and I am going to grab my sandbar. I'm going to grab another Dixie Belle Mini. And I'm just going, we're going to mist that brush first. And we're going to dip right into our sandbar. Again, with very little paint, you probably, let me move you in and up so you can see. It's going to be very subtle. So I'm going to start in this corner and I'm going to grab some more. I want my center to be more lighter and my edges to be a little darker. I'm going to go a little heavy up in here. And I'm just going to blend on down. We're going to give that a little shadow. Okay, and then we're going to give it just a quick little mist. And then we're going to blend our paint in. I paint with a very light hand when I'm painting. Okay, and we're just going to kind of soften that. And you see how it just kind of softens that just a little bit? It doesn't make it look so harsh, but I don't want it too bright either. But I do want to lighten the center. So I'm going to go back with some of that fluff in the middle, and we're just going to work that on out. And then you can just kind of offload your brush and just fade that out onto your edges. And these colors are pretty seamless. As you can see, my blend is very nice and soft. And that is about where I'm going with that. You can just kind of soften your edges just a little bit to make sure that it's not harsh. And then what I like to do when I am done blending, I will take a nice, dry, clean brush with nothing on it, and I'll make sure that I just go over it just to kind of blur those lines. And it just softens my blend just a little bit. It also helps with brush strokes. And it just kind of makes it look seamless. So that's where I'm going with that. I like the way that looks. Don't worry about this. We'll move on over to there, and then we're going to work down on the door. So now let's work down on this door area. So we're going to go a little heavier, like I said, on the edges, and we're going to stay pretty, in this centerpiece, I'm going to stay pretty light, but then I'm going to smoke out my edges just a little bit with that sandbar. So I'm going to back you guys up just a little bit, and then we're going to stitch down so you guys can see what I'm working on. All right, let me move these little brushes out of my way, and we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to dampen our piece just a little bit with, there's nothing in here but clear water, just clear water. And we're going to go in. I'm going to offload my brush just a little bit because I did blend. I'm going to make sure that there's not any sandbar on there. And we're going to get that nice fluff color. All right, and then we're just going to give our paint something to blend into. All right. Just a little bit more up in here. Again, I'm going to keep this pretty neutral in the middle. Let's get these edges down. All right, I missed. Water is your friend when you're blending. All right, there we go. And now let's go in with some sandbar. So we're going to grab just a touch of that sandbar, not a whole lot, light little bits. Okay, like I said, a little heavier through here just to kind of match it because we don't want it to look like. A lot of the times I will use the same brush when I'm blending. It just depends how I feel. And that's working pretty good for me. So we'll continue to use that. We'll grab a little bit more of that sandbar. We'll pull it down. And it's just giving that just a little bit of a hue. I will go back with some probably gray grunge wax once this is dry and go into all of my little edges just to give it a little bit more. All right, now we're gonna hit this bottom area and then we'll go into the middle section. This is pretty easy. Once you have two colors that are pretty neutral, it works out really well. Let me move these guys. I can reach where I'm going. We're going to do this little area down here. Grab our fluff. We're going to mist our piece just a little bit. And down on the bottom, I always like to go a lot heavier than I would because when you are on the piece, let me drop you guys down a little bit. When you are on the bottom of your piece of furniture, it is naturally going to be darker than it would be up, right? Because it's going to hit the ground. So usually we'll go darker when I'm blending on the bottom. So you don't have to do that. I like to do. I like that look better. All right, don't worry about my floor, guys. I'm not painting in my house. I am in my garage, so it is okay if I paint on the floor. All right, we're just going to go ahead and give that a good mist, and then we're going to come up just higher here, and we're on the cabinet door now. We're going to go back in with our sand, and we're just going to pull that sandbar down. More here. And we'll soften all of that next. I'll show you how I'm going to do that. And then we're going to go just a little bit heavier with this. And this is where all that's going to come in great for later. So I know it looks like I'm painting it bar, but we are going to blend that up and over. And so it's just going to make it look a little bit more cohesive. Fluff was just our base color, so if it is darker on the bottom, that's fine. I do like that look a lot better. And see how it just kind of makes it look a little bit more like it's meant to be that color. Okay, now let's work on this panel in here. We're just going to give that, I'm just going to come in up in here and on these edge pieces. And then we're going to work on this little bottom area down. We're going to come up just a little higher because our cabinet door comes up a little higher where it meets that beautiful. All right, there we go. About like that. And then we're just going to give that a good mist. And now let's come in with our sandbar again. And we're just going to come on up into here. All right, that's a little darker than I would like it to be. So you can always go back and forth. That's the beauty with paint. You go back and forth until you get it the way you want it. I wanted it a little lighter in the center. And it'll fade out just like that. You just got to play with it and go back and forth until you find what works for you and how you like your color scheme. Again, these colors are very close together, so it does make blending a lot easier. Let's bring you in closer so you guys can see better. Right about there should do good. Okay, now let's come back in with our sandbar and work on these bottom sections. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of smoke out my edges. So I am going to just kind of tap some paint into here just to kind of offload a little bit of that because I don't want it all in one spot. I'm going to offload my brush just a smidge, and then I'm going to use that same brush again that I dipped in the sandbar. This is the same brush. Okay, and I'll give that a little bit of mist to make it work a little bit better. You'll be able to tell when you're blending if your paint isn't moving as smoothly as you would like it to. If it's not, you just add a little bit more water. Okay, we're going to come up and down, and we're just going to work those corners. We're going to give it another little bit mist. And I like the way that that looks. I think that that's pretty good right around there. And I'm going to leave that alone. And now let's come into all these little detail areas. Now what I'm going to do with my detail areas is I also have some of the Dixie Belle Artisan brushes. So I grabbed 2 of those. I'm going to move my minis over there. And now let's get into, here we go. We'll go ahead. Try not to dip my leg in paint. All right, so we're going to grab our sandbar. And I'm just going to come on in with the sandbar, and I am going to come in all these areas that are empty, and we're going to make those darker. We're going to get in all these nooks and crannies. Because when I can get the dark in there, you can dry brush with your lighter color over top of it, and it'll pop all those details back out again. So again, we're just going to come in all these little detailed areas. And all these little center pieces. And then we're going to come up in here again. I will lighten in the middle of these with the fluff again. But for right now, we're just working on this sandbar. And then I will use some wax, and then I'll highlight with gold. So whenever I'm doing this look, it's a multitude of layers. So I will go ahead, I will paint my base coat in whatever color I'm going with, and then I'll do my shading coat, and then I'll come in and I'll do all of this work. And then wherever I cast a shadow, I'm going to want to create a highlight. So it's kind of like makeup is how I think about it when I'm painting. So wherever you're going to create your contrast, you're going to want to, highlight that area just a little bit more just to bring those details back out again. And it kind of ties the look together for more of a cohesive blend on your piece. So you just kind of have to trust the process when you're doing things like this, because it may look a hot mess for a little while, but it always comes out. We want this to be darker. The edges will be highlighted. I'll worry about my shading here in a minute. So let's just work on the middle pieces in here. And it always does come out really beautiful. It's just such a very like classy, timeless look when I do this. It's one of my favorite looks to create. I created an awful lot. It's just really beautiful. And you can do this with waxes or paints or anything that you like. I like to use a mixture of them. So I will go in and do this with paint first, and then I will use my waxes afterwards. There we go. And let's just go ahead and add some in here. All right. And back in through here. And you just want to make sure you don't miss any of these areas. Making sure you can see all that. It can be kind of time consuming, but I promise you it's worth it in the end. It's really beautiful. But all these little details is what really brings your piece together, and it's what's going to set you aside from other artists. And how you bring your piece of furniture from flat and boring to giving it some dimension and just looking really beautiful. Not really worried about those. Let's get up in here in these little crevices. Okay. Now that I have all that on there, we can work on some of that shading around the edges while that is drying. And so I will just come right on in here and bring you in really close so you guys can see. All right, I'm gonna move my paints again. And we're just gonna work right on in here. And then I'm going to take a small brush and we're gonna blend that out. And it's just gonna blend it right into that paint. And we're gonna work again in another small little section. Again, this is just my shadow. I'm gonna create a better shadow with my waxes later once this dries. But it's gonna kind of tie that together so it doesn't look like I just glued this thing right on here. It'll look like it belonged on the piece. And see how it's just creating that little bit of shadow with the around there, and it looks really pretty. I'm just gonna blend that out, grab some more of that sandbar, and we're gonna blend that on out. This brush is dry, it has nothing on it. It's kind of like just my little blender brush here that we're using. All right, and then we're just gonna blend that out. It kind of just smokes it out, gives it that nice, really pretty look. And then we're gonna come on down. This doesn't have to be exactly perfect. Again, if there's any areas that it got a little darker than I wanted it to, if you're using darker colors, you can go back with your other color and correct it. But since these colors are so close to each other, I'm not really worried about it too much. I think it actually looks really pretty. I come on down here, and then we're gonna do in here. I will go a little darker on the bottoms. You can't see that. I go darker on the bottoms because it's where the sun would naturally cast a shadow is kind of what I'm trying to recreate with these paints. Okay, let's offload our little brush to make sure there's not a lot of paint on there. We're gonna come back down on this side. Come back around in here. And then we're just gonna blend it on out. You can do small circles. I feel that works best. And now let's go around this other little bottom part, and then we'll go up and around, and that'll be it for this piece right here. And then we can go back in with our fluff and brighten her up and make her look all pretty again. Okay. Now for up over here. This is the hard part because I'm trying not to get in y'all's way while I'm painting. Okay. Again, it's not an exact science. You just want to have a rag and you can offload any of that excess paint that's on there. And you just kind of do small circles. And offload. Small circles. I can tell where I've missed some since that paint is drying a little bit. And I'm just going to go back in here and catch any little areas that I have missed. And now let's come around the side right here. Okay, we're going to take our nice brush and we're just going to do small circles. There you go. And I can already tell that I'm going to want to clean that up some. That's fine. And we're going to do small circles. I'm going to show you how we're going to clean that up. Super easy. All right, you're going to take your fluff brush that has very little paint on it. And you're just going to come on in here like a little magic eraser and get any of the areas that you don't like, that one a little bit too heavy. Okay, not a big deal. And I am just going to do the same thing in these center areas, just a little bit. Okay, I'm going to take that brush and we're just going to swirl some of that out just to get a little lightness in there. That way it's got that nice soft blend, creating our highlights and our shadows. All right, perfect. I love the way that's looking. Let's get just this little bottom area. We're just softening. There's like barely any paint on my brush. It's very, very little. I'm just softening some edges, okay? And so now while I have this brush, I'm gonna dip just very little paint in here. I'm going to offload my paint. And then I'm gonna dry brush over what I just did. And what that's gonna do is that's gonna brighten up my decorative pieces and leave all of that nice dark detail in the crevices where I want it. It's kind of aging, if you would. Okay. You see the difference where it's still leaving some of that detail work in there, but it's just a little bit lighter. Okay, again, very little paint. We're offloading, getting most of that paint back off, and then we're just going to dry brush right back over. Once this is dry, I will grab some gray grunge wax and go in all those details again, and then highlight with some gold gilding wax. So those are the next steps for this process on this piece. But I think she's looking pretty cute so far. All right. So there she is. I think that looks really good. We'll back up and I'll show you guys the difference. All right, so you can see from over there, which is like has nothing on it. It's just the starch fluff. And then we have this where it's just that nice soft blend. It kind of ages the piece back. It gives it that like kind of old world feel, if you will, but clean. So I think that she's turning out really beautiful. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me today. I will be back here next Wednesday at 10 a.m. This is my new spot to hang out, so I can't wait to meet you guys and hang out over here on the YouTube and do some fun painting tutorials with you guys. I hope everybody has a wonderful day, and thank you for having me today.